Sue Hall and Trista McDonald here, welcoming you to the Whole Dyslexic Society's Talking the Dis Out of Dyslexia, Series 2, October 2020. Today, we're going to meet my very, very good friend, Donna, who is also my very, very best sound thinking friend. So we'll let her introduce herself, and we'll let her tell you how our paths crossed.
Hi there. My name is Donna. I am a teacher and a teacher librarian and an online educator. At the time that I first discovered that not everyone thinks like I do, to my great shock and even horror, because of the implications of that in terms of being a teacher and helping all my students learn. I actually was an online teacher at the time when I had a student who was out of town, about 30 miles or so, and Daniel's mom had pulled him out of school because the learning situation was so negative for him, and I think he took up the class clown and just wasn't able to get the hang of reading and learning in the school system. Though he'd had a lot of learning assistants, he was a really neat kid, so people liked him, but he wasn't able to do the learning thing. So she provided him with a tutor, and he was busily working at home, and I was overseeing him, going over to his place every few weeks to check on his progress, and he wasn't making much. Then one day he phoned me and he said, "Donna, I can read." And I said, "Okay, read something to me." And he pulled up something and he read it to me. And I said, "How's that possible? You couldn't read last week." And I said, "Don't answer that." I said, "I'll be right over." And I hopped in my car and drove to Daniel's place. And sure enough, he was reading to me and was so excited about his gift, his ability to read. And then he started telling me all these things about an orientation point. And I just thought, what the heck is that? And so then I said, take me to the person who taught you to read in a week. So that was my introduction to Sue. So I went and met with her, and then it sort of started my education journey, where I attended some workshops as an introduction to dyslexia. I met Ron Davis, found out about Ron's story, and I was just amazed because I thought everyone thought in words like I do. When I think in words, and I just assumed everybody else did that. I knew I had students who could, for instance, solve a math problem, get it correct every time, but couldn't show me the work. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, how do you do that? But I didn't pursue it far enough. I didn't ask them about their thinking because I assumed they must think like I do. So it was this whole perception thing that was a real shock. And so I had to radically accept that not everyone learns like I do. And that's why I wasn't a successful teacher, because I couldn't reach all my students. And I talk louder, I repeated myself. Why couldn't they understand how to do a long division, for instance? Or why weren't they able to read and spell simple words? But of course, that ended up being the words that don't have pictures. So that was sort of my introduction to Davis and to the idea of people having the ability, the gift to think in pictures. And my ability was to work in sound, as Sue calls it. I call it words because I think in words. I am very successful with words. And that's why I became a teacher, because school was easy for me.
Mm-hmm. There's several wonderful points there that, first of all, we never do ask anybody how they think. We just, as you say, automatically assume that everybody thinks like we do, and why wouldn't we? And then secondly, just to explain, I have this theory that there's a continuum between the people who only think in sound, and I call them the little PC computers, and the other end of the continuum is the people who only think in images and feelings, and I call them the little Apple Mac computers. And obviously everybody occupies their own spot on that continuum with their own mixture. It's very interesting when you have somebody who's well down the sound end, they might look at someone up the other end and think, seriously? And when you have someone down the picture thinking end, they would do the same and think, you don't have images in your head? It's an interesting concept that very few people get introduced to, I feel. So, Donna, when you say that you think in sound, are you saying that when you read a book, the words, you hear them in your head?
Yes, I can only read at the speed of my thinking, which is in words, and I don't conjure up any images. So I guess one of my first reactions to that after I got over the shock was how richer the experience is with people who are visual spatial thinkers, people who have the gift of dyslexia, because they are able to, see all the images that they're reading, whereas I just read and I understand the words and I understand the concept, but I can't create pictures, which was quite a shock for me to realize that I don't have an imagination.
Okay, I was just kind of curious, because there's quite a lot of people who think sound-based way, and I've always wondered, whenever you're reading, the word dragon, for example, I can imagine a actual dragon in front of me. When you're reading a book, would you not imagine a dragon? You just hear the word dragon.
I just hear the word dragon, and I know what a dragon is. I could describe a dragon, but I don't build on my word thinking or my sound thinking to create an image of that. So I just know what it is, and it's just the word.
So this is interesting. So you would know what a dragon is because you've seen pictures of dragons, right?
Right.
I mean, tell me if my thinking's wrong here. So when you do read the word dragon, you hear the word dragon, and the understanding is complete. So if you then read lives in a cave, you know what living looks like, you know what a cave looks like, right? So is there some part of you that puts those images together without you sort of knowing it?
My mind is completely blank when I read. It's hard to describe, particularly to people like yourselves, because you have this richness of experience when you read. Now, I'm very satisfied when I read.
Yeah.
I think it's, wonderful. I love the description. I know what they're talking about, but I don't create a picture per se.
Okay.
I don't have that image thinking, or I don't have a movie going on in my head and experiencing it that way. I understand the word, I know what it means, and I move on.
Yeah. If you want to remember what you've read, do you hear yourself saying the words again?
I don't know. Memory is one of my weakest.
You can't remember, can you?
I have been working on trying to develop an imagination. I'm trying to create the image of, let's say, a cave or a dinosaur or a dragon, and see if I can create a picture and hold on to it. But the best I could do is take a picture that I've seen in the past, but it doesn't remain in my memory.
I got you.
Yeah, so it's a very different experience. And my guess is that a third of teachers, or perhaps even a greater number of teachers, are sound or word thinkers like myself. And so we naturally gravitate towards remedies with kids who have difficulties with phonics and Orton Gillingham, and more and more and more phonics, thinking that is the key that can open the magic of reading. Mm-hmm. And so it was quite a shocker for me in my mid-40s, after teaching for over 20 some years, to discover that the kids who I thought had problems really had a gift, but I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to teach with that. And so it became rather a sad tale, except that I had to accept that I had learned something and that I could move forward and help children and help myself to understand other thinkers, other people's perceptions, and just to be open and to see where that would take me.
And that explains when children are learning to spell words in the regular system, it explains why teachers will say to them, well, just repeat it, G-I-F-T, G-I-F-T, G-I-F-T. It will become the word gift, and then just write it, and it will be part of your spelling process. And that's why the sound world likes repetition, because it does solidify the word. But unfortunately, in our world, it tends to erode it, because once you have an image for the word gift, you see the word G-I-F-T, you have a picture for it, and it's done. And so if somebody keeps asking you to repeat it, you're thinking, well, Do they mean the word gift? Or do they mean the word present? Or do they mean something packaged? You know what I mean? So it sort of starts to create a little doubt in our world.
Yeah, whereas I never had any doubt. The word and the sound were my friends. I learned with ease. I just learned to read magically. I didn't need phonics per se. It just made sense to me. One day I could start to read. It made sense to me. And I just kept on and was a very successful learner, which then brought me to university, which then brought me to education. Yeah. So I could teach kids because really learning was easy.
And would you say in your experience, just in your world, that most of the teachers probably do think predominantly in sound?
Definitely, we think predominantly in sound. You know, I think more than a third of teachers, so you have sort of this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 kind of continuum that a third of people are sound-based thinkers, a third are image-based thinkers, and then there's all those thinkers in between who are comfortable in both worlds that can use their imagination as well as be successful. Maybe not quite as successful, maybe in some ways as a word thinker or a sound thinker. They may have a little bit of confusion now and then, but then they can correct it. So I certainly think that's what has held up our education system to being open to other ideas other than phonics-based learning or various programs that promote phonics, you know, to its nth degree.
Yeah.
It makes sense to us that that's the logical conclusion. And when we hear that people think differently than us, it doesn't make sense, or we think it's in the woo-woo world or something. And as a result, we have many learners who don't learn to read, who go up to grade 12, or they give up long before that and drop out of school.
I've got a question. Have you ever found a student who you've noticed doesn't think through sound-based ways, and he seems to think more image-based? Do you or anybody else that you know try to introduce a different way of learning the subject, or is it still kind of a rinse and repeat of the same method, sounding it out?
Yeah, pretty well. And, you know, what was introduced, which teachers thought was quite phenomenal, is the sensory learning. So that if you add, you know, sandpaper and spell it on sandpaper, or if you pre-made letters and you manipulate them, or some of the Orton-Gillingham strategies that are wonderful for kids who can relate to that, who are sound thinkers, and maybe can use some sensory and alternative ideas to make it work for them. But if you're a visual learner, you just don't have a chance. And I think they become very frustrated, learn other coping skills, and the school sort of counts them as unsuccessful. I know of a learning assistance teacher who said, there's nothing else we can do for you. You're in grade 5 or 6, you've been since kindergarten. We've been through every program we know. We just can't help you anymore. We don't know why you can't learn. Yet we know you're smart because you're intelligent. You've learned to talk and walk and function in this world. You're a great conversationalist. Why? What is the barrier to learning? And so when they realize, I've used all my tools, I just can't help you anymore.
It almost sounds as if you're telling the children they're terminally ill, doesn't it?
Yeah. We've kind of given up on you. You know, we've tried what we can. So I think it's just very sad that teachers haven't embraced some other ideas, been risking doing something that's uniquely different from the way we're comfortable with learning and teaching to offer it to kids. So you and I have approached every politician, every school board administrator, every literacy person we can think of, literacy consultants and so forth, and given them a picture of what if every kid could learn in your class? What if everybody could be successful? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Well, here's a tool that will help with those kids who aren't being successful now because we haven't thought that they think differently than us, that they perceive differently than us, and that we could be successful if we expanded our toolkit and offered some alternative ways for them to be successful.
From my perspective, when I give professional development day sessions and I hear the teachers saying that we had absolutely no idea that the children could think like this, I hear them understanding. And I mean, obviously they came to the session because they were interested in hearing about something else. So I sort of feel that there is a groundswell of teachers who are wanting to understand a little bit more, and they know they can't reach all the children in their class, and I know they really want to. And I often feel that that's where it stops, which is really unfortunate, because we can provide these 2-day workshops for these day-based learning strategies. And I think maybe they feel it's too much to learn, it's something extra, when really the teachers who are using these methods, they just want to emphasize that it's not extra to the curriculum, it's just a different way of teaching the existing curriculum.
It's a way of including everybody. We're not knocking anybody off. And this is what we're talking about with new learners in particular, with kindergarten, even with preschool, kindergarten, grade 1 and 2, the primary years, and, eliminating problems from occurring. Mm-hmm. We want to have every learner be successful right from the get-go. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing you can with the Davis learning strategies in the primary years. It's more challenging as the kids get older and they haven't been successful with reading or math or, whatever their challenges are, that could be addressed with using their visual spatial skills. Mm-hmm. It's not hard. It's a little expensive to learn at the beginning, but, we do have Pro-D funds. I'm often wondered, Sue, like you, why is it that it stops? Teachers want to include everybody. They love the idea, but implementation, even though it's very simple, it takes a bit of time, but teaching reading takes a bit of time. Yeah. And you can use all your other skills, your other tools in your kit to teach reading, along with using clay, for instance, to help those visual learners, those kids that we now call dyslexic, or what do they call it nowadays? Spatial processing issues or something.
All sorts of labels. But I often wonder if the teachers who do take it are literally the more creative teachers, and the teachers who stop are the ones who maybe are more sound-based.
That could be.
Intellectually, they know that this makes sense, but because it is more of a creative process, it isn't in their wheelhouse. I don't know.
If this method of learning was introduced and put into the school system, I do think it would be beneficial both to the students who are dyslexic or simply think with images, and the regular students, I think. I think it'd be possible for these students who are struggling to learn the way they're being taught. It would help them, and they would pick up and speed up. Well, the other students who don't have to use this program can see that they're doing better, and possibly there'd be less bullying, or maybe they might pick it up and then they would go, oh, it is useful for me too in some ways. And then there'd be a bit more, I don't know if this is the right word, but cohesion.
Well, let me tell you, the kids love working in clay, and you don't have to work hard to get the kids on board. And if I would have had this introduced to me as a child, I strongly believe I would have developed an imagination. I have to try very hard now to create imagination, and I'm getting a little better at it. I can sometimes keep an image for, part of a second or something. But the strategies as I teach are very, very helpful.
Just in case we have people who are tuning into this podcast and have not been listening to any of the previous ones, the workshops for teachers that we're talking about are called Davis Learning Strategies. They are 2 days long. They're designed for K-3 classroom teachers, homeschoolers, and they enable the people attending to deliver tools to all the children for focusing, for energy control, and for relaxation. They show the children how to learn their alphabet in a 3D medium. They deal with reading exercises that are visually based rather than phonetically based. And they deal with mastery of words, which involves making the 3 parts to every word, making a clay model for the meaning, making a word in clay, and mastering the word with sound. So it's a complete process. It's not to be cherry-picked. It really does involve every step. And Donna, you've been so encouraging. you've managed to get many teachers to these workshops. And the last one we had was last October, when there were several teachers from your school who came.
Yes, I was very excited that I was able to get a team from my school, a grade 1-2 teacher, a kindergarten teacher, and the learning assistant teacher. She's a very experienced teacher like myself. And so I was thrilled that she was willing to come, that she was open to it. And it was also because Sue had delivered a program to one of the students in our school, and she had witnessed the difference, not only in her ability to read more successfully and to do math more successfully, but her confidence, her feelings about herself had made such an impression. And so that really was a beautiful coming together of getting someone on board because they had been witness to one of these miracles happening. And so with that team from our school, the resource teacher is very open and supportive now of the students and is now able to see other possibilities, other tools that can be learned to assist students to be successful learners. And the kindergarten teacher decided just to take it on, just to jump in with 2 feet. And one thing, Sue, that you were mentioning, why is it that more teachers aren't moving beyond awareness, even though they want to? And I think part of it is support. And I just said to the kindergarten teacher, look, you just review and feel comfortable with how you're going to start. I'm going to get you the clay. I'm going to get you the little cutters. I'm going to get to the dictionary, and we'll be off. And I came in for the first few times and helped her with the students just because she was nervous about doing something that's so out of your comfort zone so that they can relax, to imagine something so they can focus, to imagine something so they can control their energy. And so it just went beautifully until COVID. And I think COVID sort of ground to a halt. I think she sent clay home with the kids, but it was just a bit challenging to do it because the kids didn't have access to Zoom all day long where they could do a half-hour lesson on clay and things like that. I think that if we get another setback with COVID, I think she could probably take it to the next level and do it online, especially if the kids had an introduction to the skills, of relaxing and focusing and managing the energy. So we were just thrilled. I was thrilled that there was this initiative within our school, and I know that she'll carry on next year and permanently have that a part of her kit. She really got that there were kids that she could help learn, that she could provide a medium that they could learn successfully along with all the sound thinkers.
Wonderful. And we have a teacher in Vancouver who has been using these methods now for quite some time. And I know that you were lucky enough to be able to go and see her using them. And her message has always been that it's not extra to the curriculum, it's purely delivering the curriculum in a different way. But also she notices that the little sound thinkers, all they have to do is be more creative, which really isn't such a bad side.
They can develop imagination. Yeah, so it's a thing of beauty for all learners. And, it doesn't eliminate anything that they have done before. They can still do the sound piece that they would normally do, the phonics way, but they're doing it along with the clay and making sure every kid understands the word. And that's what was so meaningful for me is when I started to do the Dolch words or the words without pictures myself in clay. I know what the means and a means. It provided no hindrance for me, but I didn't know it so deeply. I really know what a means now. I really know what the means. I really know what between means. I really know what the concept words mean. When you do them in clay, there's it's just amazing.
Now that you really know it, has it helped you? Has it benefited you in any ways in everyday life?
It's benefited me in the sense of enriching my own life. I've tutored many students And I've seen their creations and their understanding of the word. And, so I've gone along with them, and I've done all how many are there, 220 words? And so it's been a wonderful experience for me to understand those words so deeply. And it has created more imagination for me. But especially as a teacher, it's opened my mind that people don't think like me. And I have to remember that many of those thinkers are miles ahead of me. They have come to the conclusion or been able to really have a rich experience with their reading or with their math when they've been able to use their visual and spatial gifts.
Just for the listeners, Tristan's been grinning for the last 10 minutes or so. What's going through your head?
It's interesting to know that it's benefited you using this method of learning. It's nice to hear from a teacher who, I guess, sees it being useful, right? That's a step forward, because maybe that way, students who have dyslexia like me can, I guess, get more recognized that they're not stupid. It's one step closer to.
Teachers have a very narrow view, and we need to open it. We have to let them know that not everyone thinks like us, that we don't perceive things the same, and that there's time when you can orient yourself, focus yourself, and there are times where you want to let it loose and be creative. And that's revolutionary for people like me who think in words. And as I say, I think most teachers are on my side, and we don't really understand why some people just aren't able to learn successfully. And also that they don't realize that the tools are so easy for them to implement to make a difference in every kid's life.
That's a very good point, because when you hear the tools, if you're down the sound thinking end, you might be thinking that's ridiculously difficult. But when you're the other end, they're ridiculously easy. And Tristan, you're still grinning. What's going on? Oh dear. You're just loving this, yeah?
It's good. It's just really good to hear.
This is why Donna is my very favorite person in the world when it comes to supporters, because I can understand supporters who support us when they think like us, but to have a supporter who is so encouraging, who does not think like we do, I think that's a huge gift.
It's accepting. It's clear there are other people that think differently, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, perfectly fine. Let's include everybody.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's a thought. That's fantastic. And also, Donna, just so you know, one of these podcasts in this series is going to be one of the teachers who went through the workshop last October, and she's having a wonderful time with all the tools in her school. And when COVID struck, she sent the kids home with their own individual packages of clay and all their instructions to the parents. And some of the parents have been really enjoying it. The children are having to teach the parents, which is no better way to learn.
Oh, it's fantastic.
And it's also a fun way of learning, right? Who doesn't want to learn and have fun at the same time?
Right.
Learning's not supposed to be a drag.
And Tristan, something that Sue introduced me to during her workshops is the concept words, like what is communism or what is cooperation, all those social studies and science words. And I understood them, but when we made the clay model, it just came to life and something I could not forget. And so for a word or a sound thinker, that is a very powerful tool. And who wouldn't want to use that in high school or wherever else, so everyone can understand the concept.
And not just throw words around.
Have meaning so that you understand. Understanding is so crucial. And that's what builds excitement, when you understand something deeply and everybody can understand it deeply. It creates excitement, and it changes the psychology in the classroom when everyone gets something. Nobody's left behind. And that's something that I've always tried as a teacher, to include everybody. And that's why when I was introduced to Davis, that it changed my life.
Now, Donna, you have been kind enough to help me sometimes with the Pro D-Day sessions that we put on for teachers. And the ideal mixture is when I do an hour of theory, and then we change the theatre style into people sitting around tables, and we put clay on the table, and we get the teachers to master words like multiply and irony and the and change and consequence. And we put clay in front of them, don't we? And we get them to master these words. And it's so interesting when you see the models that they make, because from my point of view, sometimes the models appear more symbolic than the actual meaning. So there's a representation of what irony might be, but there's not actually the meaning. It's very interesting, but I don't think anybody would realize what they don't have until they have it.
Sue and I, we've talked about before where we all use and, the, ads and all these words every day. We know the appropriate usage of them, but we don't know the actual definition behind them.
One of my students was having a difficult time with the word must, M-U-S-T, which is not necessarily a trigger word. It's not on the list, but she kept saying, people say, I must do this and I must do that. What are they really talking about, right? And it sounds sort of quite threatening in a way, but when we looked it up and we made a model for it, it's simply something that has to happen in order for something else to happen, right? So it's not actually that threatening, but sometimes it's the way it's being used in the past, maybe, and the way obviously tone comes into it. But it was very cool, and it sort of took the fire out of the word for her.
Mm-hmm. Should is another one.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hate that should word. Mm-hmm.
They're very similar, but they're different words for a reason, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Tristan, we now need to master should.
Oh man, there's a lot of words I still need to master. It's fun though. You know, I think well into my old age, I'm going to use this clay to learn words. It's very useful. It cements in my brain. It actually stays in there a lot more because you get to create it. It's your definition. So long as the image works with the wording and the word itself, it stays there because you put your little spin on it. You've made it your own.
That's right.
It's very beneficial. And if it doesn't work for some people, then they can just go back to the other methods of learning.
Well, I remember Ron Davis saying that if there are words he doesn't understand, he makes clay models out of them.
He's 78 last Saturday, and he always used to say, model the words in the glossary. You don't need to read the book, just model the words in the glossary, because the glossary of a book has all those key words, and if you make models for them, you'll totally get what the book's about.
I've just thought about playing the devil's advocate here because with technology today, we're going to think, oh, why don't you just Google the word? Then you can get a definition there. Well, yes, you found the definition of whatever word you're looking for and you can pronounce it, but I find it's too easy.
It's superficial rather than an experience.
Can you imagine a model? Would that work? Is that a shortcut?
In answer to that, Donna, my son has been doing this obviously for some time, and he says that when he reads like a biochemistry textbook now, the film starts to happen in his head. So he doesn't always need to make a model. I think there is some sort of sophistication process that goes on, and I think the more you do it, the more an image comes into your head. But if the image is a little bit tricky to try and evolve in your head, then I would say the answer is modeling.
What I found very powerful, it's not only when the word comes up in a written form, but when it comes up in an oral form. So that confusion, you know, with the fox jumped over the fence and the person only getting fox and jump and fence and not getting the over and the part, and how confusing it is to follow instructions or how confusing it is to understand. I've told you once, I've told you 100 times, says the mother. But there's all these blanks that the kid's trying to fill in to create meaning. And that was another very, very powerful bit that I think as a teacher and as a parent, I needed to understand.
This has been fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful to you, Donna. It's always fun, and you will always remain the very best sound thinking supporter that we've ever had. And we're truly grateful for everything that you've done for us. So thank you, Donna.
It's been a pleasure. It's been a great learning curve for me and very revolutionary in my life and in my teaching.
Wonderful. As a teacher or someone who is involved in a child's learning process, Were you able to relate to Donna's wonder and astonishment? It's pretty exciting, right? Well, tomorrow we are off to New Zealand and we're going to listen to Maggie Robertson, who has immersed herself in Davis Learning Strategies in her classroom, and she is sharing her experience with us. If you want to find out more about Davis Learning Strategies, please go to www.davislearn.com. If you have questions for us, please email us info@thewds.org, and we always love to hear from you. So thank you very much and see you tomorrow.